welcome back. Now we will talk about a new decade in construction, resilience, sustainability, materials and major infrastructure investment. Sweden is entering one of its largest phase of investment in infrastructure and construction in modern times. And we, of course, want to talk a little bit more about this with an expert panel. So I let you introduce yourself. Please say we need to do exactly like this. So now it's the right names. So we start. Please tell the audience where you're from. We start here.
Okay, my name is Johan Brantmark. I'm from the region of Stockholm, responsible for a new metro line investments that we have in the region.
My name is Christina Salmhofer, and I'm working as a sustainability strategist in the city of Stockholm in one of the largest urban development projects right now, which is called the Stockholm Rail Seaport.
Yes.
My name is Andreas. I'm founder and co-CEO of a technology company called Paebbl. We take CO2 and turn it into a cement-like material.
Hi, my name is Ivana Kildsgaard. I'm an architect and engineer and work as sustainability director at Tengbom Architects.
Yeah, and my name is Linn Dahlberg. I work for Fabege, which is a property development company and also long-term owner of properties. And I work with product development. And
very welcome to this, all the experts. We start with Andreas. When it comes to material innovation, such as carbon negative or circular materials, when it's changing, what would you see here? What is the most important and what will make the resilience that the market is asking for?
Yeah, I think you can mainly take two perspectives on what is going to change with the introduction of both circular and otherwise more environmentally friendly materials for construction. And I'm going to be talking about concrete mainly in this case as the biggest and most produced material on the planet, and obviously something that sits at the heart of every single piece of infrastructure we're building. One angle that is going to change is the resilience of the supply chains that we're going to have, and the other one is obviously the environmental footprint of building out of concrete. Now, we're very focused on the environmental footprint part. Our technology is one where you can, instead of making cement and emitting CO2, you can start with CO2, combine it with other minerals so that you can get a cement-like material. So the change that we are making possible and are now scaling up the technology is to practically turn concrete from a carbon emitter to a carbon sink, so that every single piece of infrastructure and building that we build in the future, when you combine the materials in the right way, can actually be a net carbon sink instead of a net carbon emitter. I think that's going to be the really, really major shift that is going to happen over the next 5 to 10 years when these types of materials, not only ours, but also other alternative materials, are becoming available at industrial scale. And that jump from pilot and demonstration plants to industrial scale is exactly what's happening right now. Over the next 3 to 5 years, that's when you start having these plants coming online. I think that's the most relevant one for this conversation.
And now when you look at, do you really feel like the market is asking for this as well?
Absolutely,
yeah?
100%. Our go-to-market has involved talking to every single player within the construction value chain, all the way from the cement makers to the concrete makers to the construction companies, the general contractors, the real estate investors, the asset owners, and the public or private individuals who are ultimately presiding over the infrastructure that is going to be built. And our learnings are, first of all, that the owners of the buildings or the infrastructure are most interested in decarbonizing their physical assets, and at the same time, the general contractors and the concrete companies and the cement companies are losing deals if they cannot provide materials with a low enough carbon footprint, partly because of incoming regulation and partly because of customer demand. So both of those arrows are pointing in the same direction. So the customers are asking for this material, and much more than we can supply right now. Like, we've put maybe 600, 700, 800 tons of material out into the field by this point, and those tons that we have put into the field in real projects have generated roughly 2,000 to 3,000 times in annual demand for our first commercial plant already. So the demand is there. It's just about how quickly can we catch up and supply that demand.
And Johan, it's been talked about region Stockholm, Stockholm region, about and all these infrastructure projects. when you look at it, how important are life cycle when it comes to when you look at materials in choosing them and integrating them and so on? How much are these values now taking into account when you are building so much?
I mean, every time we do a planning here, we create a budget, or we create a budget for our carbon emission as well, and that is absolutely one part of the decision basis that we form when taking decisions. And when planning, I mean, we're bound by legislation, but also by our own values to make sure that we plan a subway, in my case, that is really taking as little resources in use as possible. So it is really one important factor. And what we do is, for instance, as you say, carbon emissions from concrete. That's one of the big issues, and I come back to what we're doing on that one. Planning a small facility as possible to reduce the size is one thing that we look at, and also how to take care about in our case, rock, and to recycle the rock and excavated material in a smart way as possible. All those things forms the basis for our planning, at least, and they are very, very important cornerstones.
And do the whole panel agree that now you could really see that the circular construction are like reshaping? So before it was only big companies getting some of them, but now you see startups and the companies that are small but might maybe leading in this one be part of bigger construction projects. Is that something that you are seeing?
Yeah, and I would say like the major change right now is that we have much more knowledge. Yeah, so before we didn't know how much carbon emissions we generated from projects, but now when we have more of the data and also more data about what we put into the buildings, we can start to make conscious choices. And I think that's one of the biggest changes, at least for us. At least now we know we can start to make aware decisions, which we couldn't do in the past because we didn't have any data.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, you need to build knowledge to make good decisions, because you need to focus on that things which are most important. What is minimizing the climate impact the most, and also when it comes to the costs. You have to look into what kind of decisions you need to make just to make the biggest change. But at the same time, I would also say that we, as the city of Stockholm in that case, I think we are playing a really important role to drive innovation forward as a catalyst, as a driver towards a more sustainable future. But all the other actors, of course, do also have a very important role when it comes to suppliers, when it comes to developers, contractors. They are all sitting on the expertise. They are sitting on the skills, prototype development, product development. And I think, but also Academy has a very important role to play, because they are responsible for the scientific evidence, for the knowledge, and for the ideas. But everything has to be a network, a collaboration between those different actors.
And speaking about Stockholm planning, because now before it was about maybe climate change, now it's like you said before here, it's about the supply chain, that it needs to be reliable and so on. How are you working with this?
Yeah, of course, we all are facing very, very big challenges and crises. So we are working with material security, because this is a very big question. We have a very close cooperation, for example, with the region, because when we are, especially the Stockholm Royal Seaport is a former brownfield area, which means normally, traditionally, you would excavate, you would remediate, and that would mean a lot of material would go to external facilities. And at the same time, you would need to buy a lot of stuff just in time when you need this. But in that case, we developed by a competitive procurement model. We procured a mass logistics center just to be sure that all the materials that we need to excavate, that we need to sort and to clean up, that this would be done locally. And this also gives us, this is also minimizing vulnerability and increasing reliability. And in that sense, we are also taking care of the materials from the expansion from the metro by the region, which is a very interesting business model for us as well.
And from a development perspective, going to you, Linn, when you look at all this, you know, how do you balance? It's like everybody wants it to be very nice. We have a very big discussion about design and architecture in Sweden. We have the material innovation, but also this finance, maybe flexibility, because it goes up and down. Like, how do you work with the clients and try to get this a bit of a longer view?
Well, first of all, we have to balance it, because right now it's rather hard to even find any kind of profitability in project, because the market is rather hard. The material prices have gone up after the pandemic, and then also the market is pretty unstable right now, which I think is good in a way, because it makes us have to think. But what I see is a big change. First of all, we have to work together with our customers to create an acceptance for reused materials or also different kinds of materials. We have to work with entrepreneurs to work in new ways, just to find an acceptance to work with reused materials. It's a completely different supply chain working with that. And then also together with the municipalities, because, for example, if we want to use reused bricks, we don't know exactly the color of the bricks. And then we need the permits, the building permit to build at the time when we don't know the color of the house. So it's rather complicated to work with it. And to be honest, like, since we started to really focus on this work, we have felt rather lonely, because it's a lot of detective work to do as a company, trying to find different companies that we can work with. We don't have the regulations in place, and so it's been challenging. So we really appreciate like this discussion and have more of a cooperation between different parties.
You even created your own hub, because you wanted it.
Yeah.
Was that because it was so hard to say that we want to reuse bricks, and then without seeing them you didn't know the color? Was that part of why?
That's exactly because we had no other party. So what we've done at Fabege is that we created a like material circulation hub. So because we own up properties in different sites in Stockholm, so what we do is that we bring material from different sites to this hub so that we can use in different buildings. And this was a way to even make it possible, because we had no other alternatives at that time. And then it was also a problem just to avoid making it into waste, because if it's considered being waste, then it's completely other kind of regulation. But by doing this, we have increased the knowledge in the organization, the acceptance of it, and we have actually found ways to make it profitable. But we have also discovered challenges with it. So, for example, just a small example is cabinet doors. They're all flat, but some are 1.8 centimeters, some 1.6, and some 2.0, and we can't then use them. So one of the things that we have done now is to improve our guidelines. So when we procure things, we also prepare for the future so we can reuse it. So we have to balance it, but we also have to increase our knowledge.
And said before in the panel, it's very important that the decisions are made based on facts. And going into digitalization, AI, and so on, Ivana at Tengbom, when you look at this, how has digitalization and AI improved design and maybe also the energy performance and the reduce? Like, how do you work with all of this?
Well, first of all, digitalization has really had a great impact for the industry. Because it enables us to get to have decision making throughout different project stages, and as soon as we have like aspects like the climate impact and so on, material use, that's something that we can actually do in very early stages and make informed decisions. And we are at a stage where AI is actually coming into the market. It's like many different tools, and they can definitely improve the efficiency and the quality of the designs and the decisions that we make. But we are still not there where they can really help us with the complex decisions. I think that will definitely come in a few years when AI can really be our co-worker and help us, make the decisions in all the stages of the design based on climate and material use, but even aspects like daylight, thermal comfort, glare, and so on.
Yeah, and I also think it can help us optimize it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because right now, like last year, we spent 70 million Swedish crowns just in like where we rebuild buildings, not like new projects in waste materials. And just optimizing that would be great. It's profitable for us, it's profitable for the environment, and it would be a better work environment. But with AI, I think it would be more possible to do it.
Yeah, but the most important thing, the key, is the data.
Yeah.
That we have good quality data and standardized data, because the biggest challenge now with reuse is that the products that are out there on the market, the information about them is not standardized. So one actor has the information in one way, the other is in the other way. So that I think is the key for both the new products and the reuse products.
Christina, in this earlier today we had a panel with Swedish politicians, and then they say that their dream is that they will be like an AI system where you get a pre-decision when it comes to construction, and also if for example Exploateringskontoret make something that stands out from the rest of Sweden, you will get like a red flag. What do you say about the system? Would it be more when it comes from a Swedish perspective? Is it sometimes today too much of different in the local or regional decisions, and that it would be maybe easier with like one single Swedish market? Or would that be a problem from a Swedish perspective where these decisions are local?
Well, I think it would be so great if you could weigh all those different aspects into one digital tool. It's just amazing.
Yeah.
I do not think this will happen.
Yeah.
The red flags could be out of different aspects, climate, social questions, but I don't think it's really possible to put this into one digital tool. But I think we always have to focus on not just on the local context. We have to see this in a regional, in a national, a global context. Just to focus on one aspect in one area would not give us the right decisions.
Johan, when it comes to projects in Stockholm region, or the difference between Stockholm region and the national program, you said, because the national program is then they choose a budget for a couple of years, and then when you know the finance from that, you also put some finance in. Is that the right way of seeing the planning when it comes to?
Can you say again?
The decisions making is from the government or Trafikverket. They make this longer.
The long-term plan for this. For the national plan.
Yeah.
Well, that comes from a proposal from the Trafikverket, decision by a government.
Yeah.
Some of those decisions also comes to the benefit of the region.
Yeah.
So when it comes to heavy infrastructure in a city like Stockholm, Gothenburg, Malmö. Yeah, we are partially financed by the national funds as well. So the metro expansion parts comes from government, parts come from the region of Stockholm, parts comes from the city of Stockholm, and that's how funding is built up for a big infrastructure project within a city.
So for the coming decade, the 10 years, everything is already decided.
Quite a bit of the funds are tied up, I suppose. Yes.
Yeah.
But and what you will look at is definitely railway. You will look at further metro systems as well. Yes, but we have a long-term planning. Yes.
When you see now, looking at the coming decade, what would you see? Is it possible for new actors to enter the market, or do you feel like so much is already decided? Could you say from your different views? What would you say?
No, I think there are definitely opportunities for new, both for new, because you have to think in new ways. Yeah. So first of all, like with developing AI tools to help in this process, there are so many opportunities, and there is no one that has. I mean, there's a lot of startups coming up and exploring different fields, but there's plenty of opportunities there, I would say. And then when it comes to materials, I think there's many opportunities as well, because you have to start to think in new ways of doing things. So I think there are great opportunities.
Ivana?
I fully agree, especially in the digitalization sector and AI. There are actually a lot of threats to traditional companies. If they don't start to transform and adopt new technologies, they will be wiped out. So we also the traditional need to change and transform. And what I can see in, for example, in the interior industry that has been working with circular solution for many years, it is actually the actors, those that are the startups that are coming from different disciplines and different industries that actually are making the change, because they are coming with completely new ideas and seeing the potential. And I think that's really beautiful, because we need those to fill up the gaps that we have today in order to transform from linear to circular economy.
Andreas?
I think that change is also going to be partly driven by the fact that many of the new companies entering the space and many of the incumbents that are changing how they're working, those kind of new possibilities that are being introduced to the market are driven by people who are traditionally outsiders to the industry. I had nothing to do with the construction industry before we started this company. I knew nothing about construction either. But of course, then you have to learn very, very fast. But from the perspective of new materials entering the sector, in enabling more circular supply chains and enabling the further decarbonization and ultimately, hopefully, carbon negativity of all construction, that is, of course, going to be massively accelerated by the change in regulation that is coming up on an EU level, which is moving from recipe prescribing to performance prescribing. That's one thing. And the other thing is just that there's, due to the data availability that you have all been talking about, the decision-making foundations to specifying and requesting these materials, whether it's a private actor or a public actor, is there, which means that the demand for these materials will be going up, which means there's further signals for new players to enter the market.
Yeah.
So I think it's absolutely going to change over the next years. And you can also see that in the investment decisions and acts of the bigger players in this industry, from the cement companies to the construction companies to every single part of the value chain. So absolutely there is space, and absolutely there is action.
Christina?
Yeah, I totally agree. I guess also, I mean, it's not just about materials, it's about systems, how to create more circular systems. We are not just talking about building materials, it's about water, it's about energy, and everything has to become more circular. Right now we are so linear still. We have to change the mindset, and which also means completely new ways of thinking and more local circular systems together with the region. And I think this is key for us to move forward to tackle all the challenges.
Johan?
There's always room for development, and there will always be a market for new ideas. I think that when we look at metro systems, the biggest climate impact we will have on the rolling stock when you use the system, actually. So, I mean, new trains, you see development of new trains, new rolling stock. That's a lot of development there. Tools helping us in planning, lots of development. When it comes to the big investments in the infrastructure itself, concrete, steel, it is big climate impacts on those materials. We're a bit conservative, but because we are really mindful of the maintenance costs, that it should be durable. But what we do is that we have now started to cap the allowable carbon footprint on the material that's used on our sites, and we'll also start to use it as an evaluation of the tenders that comes in. So contractors who can offer collaborations with a concrete supplier with a lower footprint will have an advantage. So that's one way we can help the market to develop.
Because I think some companies here, they'll be like, okay, so of course the private sector will always be positive. How is the public sector seeing it? But listen to both of you. Stockholm as this international city, you see that international companies can either collaborate or participate in Swedish future projects.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think we heard this in the earlier panels as well. It's a lot about engaging early. It's about partnering with local actors, which is really, really impossible, but really important. But of course, the understanding of the planning and the regulatory framework is key. But then, of course, we also need strong references, proven solutions, which are really minimizing different aspects, such as climate impact, for example.
You were just saying that as well.
Yeah. I do, and we really try to push forward. But when you build big infrastructure, we will also be considered a bit conservative because we're really mindful for the maintenance aspects. We try new things on smaller scales before we started on bigger scales, but we are doing what we can to promote the market to develop and to use reusable materials. And for instance, even on steel, we put caps now on permissible emissions just to make sure that the market is developing.
And by the way, just from a new material supplier's perspective, it's actually a very good thing that big buyers on the public side, or the private side for that matter, are conservative in adopting these materials. Number one, of course, we want, just like you want, that whatever we build out of new materials is just as safe or even safer than what we used to build before. But it does also mean that it provides the incentive for us to develop the product to be good enough so that it's at least as good, or in our case and in many cases actually better than the pre-existing materials. Then of course you still have the time lag for the new materials to enter the market, which is partly driven by the existing processes for regulation and partly driven by exactly the kinds of testing loops that you were describing. First you test on a small scale, then on a slightly bigger scale, and kind of step by step you increase the risk that you're taking in terms of the type of structure you're going for to increase comfort on every front and maximize certainty of a good outcome for everyone.
As a closing remark, in one sentence, what do you believe will define the Swedish construction industry by 2035? Will it be climate performance? Will it be resilience? Will it be digital integration? Or it will be something else?
That was a tricky question. I hope that it's going to be that we build for the people that are going to use it, so that we have a long lifetime of what we do and create. And I hope that we have a system perspective of what we do, so that we now sort of chose everything. But I think it's really important never to forget why we build it, and then also try to get like the system perspective. And I think that's something that we are rather good at in Sweden, is to embrace more than one thing.
I would say that I really hope that we will use the things that we already have more and better, and it's the spaces that we already have, and both increase the use and also work with transformation, additions, rather than building new. I think that thanks to the really exponential development of AI, I hope that will really be used in a smart and responsible way, because at the moment it's simply out there and free, but that it will be used to support the green transition, so that in 10 years' time it will really help us make the good decisions from the sustainability perspective of our built environment. And that I mean the whole, not only climate, but even the social aspects.
Very important,
I think it's going to be a resilient, local, very heavily decarbonized supply system, if I borrow that word. It's obviously not a chain, because it's about the entire network, which goes in every single direction on multiple different levels, on local levels, regional levels, national levels. I think Sweden has a very good chance of leading the pact in Europe on this front.
Thank you. Christina?
We have no more time left to choose between anything. We have to work with everything at the same time, because there are also synergy effects, and of course there are also conflicts of interest, and that has to be weighed against each other, and we may have to make decisions. And you cannot work on the silo basis. You have to work with everything together in collaboration.
Johan?
I think also we will be characterized by collaboration and collaborative environment. And yes, resilient, I think, is the word I would use for the 2035 period,
Thank you so much. Very good panel discussion with like a broad perspective. Thank you so much to the panel.